Hey everyone, this is Keith Baker. I am the host of the Dancing with Cancer podcast, where we talk about how to live an upbeat, joyful life in the middle of the cancer storm. Let's go.
Hey everyone, it's Keith Baker with the Dancing with Cancer podcast, episode 38, Worship in Spirit and Truth, part 1. Again, this podcast has been created specifically to talk about the journey of how to have an upbeat, joyful life in the midst of the cancer struggle. For me, that journey started a year ago in October when I was diagnosed with myelofibrosis, a rare bone marrow cancer. And even today, as we've a year into this process, and we've been much more knowledgeable about what it means and what it is, and we've been prescribed certain medications, and we have a path forward. There's still a lot of uncertainty concerning the future and exactly what that means or how long that will be, for lack of a better way to describe it. And so the challenge is how do we get the most out of life day to day with this kind of dark cloud over our heads, and not allowing our minds just to run wild with all the different possible scenarios and all the negative things that could maybe happen. And so that's been the kind of the thrust or the goal of this podcast, is to speak to people while they're in the midst of the struggle, whatever struggle that may be, whether it's a health issue, whether it's a financial issue, whether it's a marital issue, just an occupational issue, employment issue, whatever that difficult time or valley is for you. We want to be there to encourage you in those moments and to help hopefully teach principles that can be applied to life that can help you navigate that journey during the valley, help you to get through it quicker, and just endure the chaos in a more positive way during that time. And so that's been kind of the thrust for this podcast. And we're going to hit, I think, a 3-week topic of worship in spirit and truth. And I've shared in the past that I believe specifically that, right now, if you were to meet me at the store or at work, I'm just Keith Baker, and I joke around a lot and I have a lot of fun. Life is short. I want to get the most out of it. You probably would not know I have cancer. And fortunately, I've been lucky enough up to this point that I'm not bedridden or that kind of thing. But it still takes a lot of effort mentally and emotionally to stay on course, if you will. And so, but I think I've mentioned in the past that I believe my success, or any success that I've had up to this point in this journey of being able to maintain a healthy mental outlook, is directly tied to my relationship with Jesus Christ. And in addition to that, I truly believe that not only is my ability to stay upbeat and positive and even experience joy on a day-to-day basis tied to my relationship with Jesus, but I truly believe it's tied specifically to how and when I worship Jesus. And so that's what we want to look at the next 3 weeks, is to look a little closer at what it means to have a relationship with Jesus and how this aspect of worship ties to or impacts my day-to-day life and my ability to remain upbeat and encouraged and even have a lot of laughs and a lot of fun on a day-to-day basis, even though I'm in the middle of this chaos. And so that's what we want to look at. Again, one of the verses that we've used quite a bit on this podcast since the beginning is John 10:10, and it says, the thief does not come except to steal, kill, and destroy. I have come that they might have life and they may have it more abundantly. Again, this is Jesus Christ talking in the New Testament. The thief does not come except to steal, kill, and destroy. I have come that they may have life and they may have it more abundantly. So it's kind of a two-sided coin, right? The thief we believe to be Satan, Lucifer, and he has come to steal, kill, and destroy. But Jesus is saying, I have come specifically that they may have life. I believe that applies to life on this earth, and that they may have it more abundantly in a bigger, better way. Now, again, I'm not talking about necessarily that's some kind of promise to make us rich and famous or that kind of thing. But I do believe that life with God is a lot better than life without God. Or that when you start living out the promises in God's words and the teachings in God's words and the principles in God's word, the quality of life improves almost immediately. And again, that joy and that peace changes through God's Spirit that's in us and living through us. So with that in mind, let's look at John 4:23 and 24. But the time is coming, indeed it's here now, when true worshipers will worship the Father in spirit and in truth. And the Father is looking for those who will worship him that way. For God is spirit. So those who worship him must worship him in spirit and in truth. For God is spirit. So those who worship him must worship him in spirit and truth. Now, before we go too deep into this, let's talk real quick about what does worship even mean? I mean, what does that word mean? You know, I think a lot of times in our modern church, when you talk about worship or worshiping God, most of us think of singing at church. You know, most churches have a music portion, a worship portion that is specific to the music. But by all means, worship is not limited to just the time at church when you're singing. It is a very powerful time and can be a very important time of worship. Definitely, absolutely. And music is definitely a powerful, powerful tool to both encourage us and help lift us up, as well as a tool that can be used in worshiping God. But it's not limited to that by no means. And so first, I just want to do a real quick definition of worship. And this is just kind of a working definition, maybe help you think about it in a different context. And then I want to look at some tips to help us worship and why it's important to worship, to be intentional in our worship. So first, the definition for worship is the reverence or adoration that one shows towards something or someone, holding a person or object in high esteem, or giving a person or an object a place of importance or honor. So it's the reverence or adoration that one shows towards something or someone. Now, of course, in this context, we're talking about God, the God of the Bible specifically. And so we're talking about the reverence or adoration that one shows towards God, holding God in high esteem and giving God a place of importance or honor. So let's look at 5 tips. Well, I'm going to say 5 tips for worshiping. Now, again, I truly believe that my ability to live a positive life during crazy times and when there's a lot of uncertainty there is tied specifically to my relationship with Jesus Christ. But I believe my relationship to Jesus Christ is tied to my worship life and how I practice that and how I live that out in the real world. And so tip number 1 is the more intimate your relationship with God is, the deeper your worship will be. The more intimate your relationship with God is, the deeper your worship will be. Now, that works both ways, right? So it's the more intimate your relationship is with God, the deeper your worship will be, but also the deeper your worship is, the more intimate your relationship with God will become. And so it's kind of a two-sided coin again, where if we go out of our way, or we become more intentional about worshiping God and being focused when we worship God, it will impact our relationship with God. It will help our relationship go deeper and stronger. So let me put it another way: is your interaction with God outside of church will impact your interaction with God inside the church. What does that mean? So I think a lot of times, let's talk about the worship time in church, the music worship time in church. It's set apart as a time, if it's done right, is a time to really focus on God and again express adoration for God, express your devotion to God and your love for God. And so, in theory, when you're sitting in church, singing along with the praise team, it should not be, you got the praise team or praise band or whatever you have, choir or whatever you have there. It's not that the choir is the performers and we are the audience, the congregation is the audience, or the praise team are the performers and the congregation is the audience. The way it should be working is that the praise team and the congregation together are the performers and God is the audience. And it's only when that's the mindset that you have when you practice worship in the church setting that it becomes true worship as opposed to just a performance. So a lot of times the praise team or worship team may understand this, but sometimes those of us in the congregation miss out on this concept that we appreciate the music and the quality of the music. And well, let me say one thing. But I think sometimes we lose sight of that as the people in the congregation, that our role isn't there just to consume the music or the entertainment or the performance, but we are to be co-performers with the praise team or with the worship team in singing to God. And so, when we sing these songs, it's important that we think about the words of the songs and what are the words and what do they mean. And so I don't want to just replicate the words because it's got a good melody or good tune, but I want to truly, with my heart and my spirit, sing to God a love song to him. Just like maybe there was a time in life where you sang love songs to your spouse, right? And you were trying to communicate to your spouse what you were feeling on the inside, right? It's a very similar thing where you love God because he's done so much in your life. He's changed your lives. He's made your lives better. Many times he's rescued you from just horrible situations, or maybe sometimes he rescued you from your own bad decisions. And so you love God for it, but now in this moment you're wanting to tell God how much you love him, how much you adore him, how much he means to you through song, through the lyrics of the song. And so you're literally singing a love song to God. So you and the praise team are the performers and God is the audience. So when we go back to this first tip, the idea is, if your view or idea of God is that he's somewhere out there in the sky somewhere and he kind of wound things up and let it go and the world's just kind of unwinding, that he's not a personal God that's in your life every day, then your worship's going to be different than if you see him as a personal father who loves you, who cares about you, who interacts in your life every day, that he hears you every single day when you pray to him, that he's concerned about the challenges that you have every single day, and that he wants to guide you through this journey and give you, directions and instructions and that kind of thing. The more intimate your relationship is with God, the more intimate your worship's going to be, or the deeper your worship's going to be. And the flip side's also true. When you become more intentional in your worship and you decide, you know what, I really want to go into this worship service focused on God, and I really want to communicate to God what my heart is feeling, and I want Him to see me in that light. The deeper worship will make your relationship with God more intimate, and your intimate relationship with God will make your worship deeper. It works both ways. Okay, so that's the tip one. Tip number two: don't be afraid to be free during worship. Again, we're talking about worship at church specifically, but it could apply to worship at home as well. Don't confine yourself to one style. What does that mean? So, one of the things I've learned, having grown up in church and literally being in church all my life, and having attended a handful of different churches, and traveling and visiting family members and friends at other churches, is that oftentimes every individual local congregation, if you will, has its own personality, just like individuals within the congregation has a personality. So you'll go to some churches, and that personality of that local congregation is very reserved. And so they may sing songs, whether they be worship songs or hymns, but it seems to be just very reserved, very laid back, very easygoing. You go to other churches, and it just seems like there's all kinds of enthusiasm. There may be hand clapping, they may be singing, shouting, all kinds of different ways of expressing themselves. And I truly believe that both are important. In other words, the first may be a lot more focused on more of a meditative type mental thing where you're focusing on God and it's very reverent. Where the other may be a much more of a joyful celebration type thing because you're excited about what God has done and the importance of that. Again, I believe both of those have a role, and I think it's important for us to learn to, again, in those moments of worship, it's all about God. It's not about us. And too often I feel like we, in our humanness, make it about us and make it about the people around us, when in theory, during worship, God should be the object of the worship. God is what we're showing adoration to or reverence for. And when we read like the book of Psalms, for example, right? Psalms are songs written by mostly Solomon and David, maybe a few others. But these are examples of worship. And as we read the Old Testament, for example, we know that David worshipped in many different ways. And they included, for example, Psalm 150, I think it talks about loud clanging cymbals. There are times when you hear about them clapping hands or shouting as part of the worship. We know David danced as part of his worship. And again, depending on what your church background is right now, some of you are thinking, well, of course, that's obvious. And some of you are thinking like, whoa, no way, that would be like the end of the world because of your church background possibly. And I guess I'm just challenging you to express the joy in your heart to God in a way that you're comfortable with, and not to get too caught up in, well, what will everybody else think about me, because it really doesn't matter what they think. What matters is what does God think. And Um, so I just want to, I guess, throw it out there that there are a lot of different ways that this worship may manifest itself, whether it's shouting or singing or dancing or kneeling, being loud or quiet, lifting your arms up or lifting your hands up in worship. Again, it's when you lift your hands up, what are you doing? You're kind of giving your adoration to God above instead of me. You're taking the focus off me and you're putting the focus on God. Um, or even quiet meditation. I think there are times when you just need to be still and know that He is God. To kind of separate yourself from everything and just focus on God. So the second tip for worship is not to get too tied to any one form or style of worship, and to open yourself up to try other things on occasion, to truly express, to allow your spirit on the inside to cry out to God, to express the celebration of what He has done for you, and to just to allow yourself to use different styles of worship, um, whether it's publicly or at home. What I found for me is a lot of times it started at home, being able to worship in different styles, and then it carried into at church at times because when I'm worshiping God, I'm worshiping God. It's really not relevant where I'm at. So as we recorded these 5 tips for worship to help you better understand and practice worship, we realized that the actual recording was longer than we anticipated, so we broke that up into 2 episodes. So the first 2 episodes will be the 5 tips of worship, and then the third episode will be about worshiping specifically in spirit, and then the fourth episode will be regarding worshiping in truth. So again, we are so glad that you came by and joined us today. And again, the ultimate goal is to lay out principles that can change the way you live life, so that you can experience life at a higher level, a more abundant life, a life filled with peace and joy that actually can make life fun again. And that doesn't mean there won't be bad days and there won't be bad times. But that darkness doesn't have to be permanent. And I truly believe God wants to do healing in you, a physical healing at times, but even an emotional or mental healing. A lot of times life gets hard, and that hard life impacts us mentally and emotionally. And I believe there are times when God needs to help us in those areas as well. So that's the goal, is to try to lay down principles and teachings that will help you live life at a higher level and get more out of life and just enjoy life more. And then that releases you or enables you to then enjoy your family and friends so much more. They need you to be the healthiest version of you possible. And that's what we're praying for and hoping for. Again, we love you guys so much. We're glad you came. Please hit the like, the subscribe, and the bell, and we will see you next Monday. Adios.